everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. How are you? Welcome into session 4 of February. Can you believe it? We have come to the conclusion of our month together. And I'm proud to tell you, I'm very excited to tell you actually that you are working your way quickly through the calcination phase, which is the hardest part of alchemy. Calcination is, of course, the burning away, the melting away of anything that isn't core to you, right? So this is nobody's favorite part of alchemy. Well, I kind of like it. I do, because I have found I had been holding on to some extra pounds, honestly, leading up to the start of this year. And it's like nothing I did worked. It wasn't budging. And the calcination phase is helping me burn through. Because it can. If you set the intention that it will, the burning and releasing, thanks you guys, I really appreciate that. The burning and releasing of the calcination phase is a complete burning. You know what I mean? It can actually be used to stimulate and fuel your metabolism. I feel like I'm digesting my food better during this phase. So I don't know if you've had any of that experience yourself. If you haven't and you want to, you might set the intention. You're already doing the work, right? To have that kind of experience of what it means to burn through and burn out. Not burn out, but you know what I mean. Okay, so welcome to session 4. I'm going to be gentle with my bell because when I watched Melissa's video in our Facebook group today, it was really loud. So doing like a little tiny. I have to ring the bell, but I don't have to cause ear damage to do it. So welcome into session 4. Yay! I'm so glad you guys are here. Tonight's going to be fun. So let me tell you what's on the menu for tonight. First of all, I'm going to teach you everything I know about candle magic and flame magic. And then we're going to do a little scrying together, which I think is fun, using your oil lamp, which came as part of your tools, and I hope you've been enjoying it. I really do. We have some in a different color coming from Egypt, so if you really wanted one and you're like, I'm really kind of bummed I didn't get one of those lanterns, I reached out to my team to find out when gold perfume is coming back. I haven't heard back yet. So we'll see. I'll have some updates on that, on all of those things for you. We are giving you 20% off the candle section at Sage Goddess. We thought that might be kind of fun because some of you were like, I don't really have any candles in my collection. And we make all of our own. One of the things I'm really proud of at Sage Goddess is that since the beginning, the whole 10 years, we've been rolling our own beeswax candles by hand, by the sheets. And I have a company that custom dyes the colors for us. And so the wax is unique to Sage Goddess. We make it all by hand. Like we put oil in our hands as we roll the candles with the intention, and they all have a gemstone inside. And truly, they're super magic. A woman named Raquel really leads our candle production at Sage Goddess. She's super magical. She's been doing it forever. I don't know, Alexis, how many years is it now? I mean, at least 5 or 6 years. And she's just super great. and she brings so much magic to those candles. We've had some really fun stories over the years of people who really, count on those candles for their energy. So anyway, if you'd like a candle at sagegoddess.com, if you go to that section, everything's 20% off with code CANDLE20, I think is what it is. I wrote it down somewhere. CANDLE20. If you'd like one. If you already have enough candles, then don't do that. I love candles because I burn them all the time. I actually, I'm coming back to my Maybon candle from last year. I know it sounds funny, but I've been craving a little bit of the energy of fall. And so I've started burning this one again. I burned it last night. And I'm going to do a little wax reading with you tonight. So I'm going to burn a little bit of it tonight. I come back to my candles. I keep them, the ones I don't burn all the way down, I keep them in a little closet, a little tiny closet in my bathroom. And I come back to them sometimes later, like, I want some of that fall energy, or I want some of that harvest energy, or I want some of that Yule energy, or whatever it is, right? The Chimpaka candle I've burned through all of mine, and we don't have any more at the shop, so I don't have that one to burn tonight. But yeah, so anyway, whatever you would like is there, but you do have a special code just for candles, if you would like that. Okay. Ready? So I'm gonna do tonight's class the way I've been doing in the last couple sessions. I'm gonna be really focused here for the first half hour, 45 minutes. Okay. The second half of class tonight is all Q&A. And we're going to start to do more of this in session 4 at your request. People want more time to ask questions, kind of pick my brain, hear each other a little bit, share wisdom. So I'm going to start making half of session 4 a space for that. So you really have 2 chances a month to ask questions. One is your coaching that I do for you, the audio that I do for you, and the other one is going to be session 4 where you can really ask some deep questions, and we'll get into some interesting conversations. Nothing's off limits. You can ask whatever you want. I don't always have the answers, but I do my best. And I'm certainly an open book, so yeah. So anyway, I think that'll be fun. Does that sound good to you for tonight, for our rhythm and our program for this evening? So we're going to start where we need to start. I did want to tell you really quickly a couple things about your tools for this month before we kiss them goodbye, because you may not want to kiss them goodbye. Okay, the self incense blend from this month, you could probably smell it if you were using it, has white sage and Palo Santo in it, like a lot. Okay, it's ground white sage and ground Palo Santo. It also has lobelia, which is for stress relief, really good for stress relief. Lobelia is also good. I like lobelia when I'm trying to kick a habit or detox from something. Like me trying to detox from sugar the last couple of weeks, like I've been burning this a lot. Lobelia is really good for that. Mulberry is another one that's in here that we don't always put in everything. Mulberry is interesting. For me, mulberry is visions and dreams, but it's a clairvoyant herb. It stimulates a lot of the capacity to see. You know, some people see, some people hear, some people sense. Why am I saying this to you? Keep this out. Use it beyond this month. It's a really good clearing, visioning, relaxing incense. This would be great to carry with you or keep with you when you do ceremonies to open your circle or close your circle. So I want to encourage you. I don't know what you do with your tools at the end of the month, but this is a keeper. And then the depth is the other thing I wanted to tell you about. This is a keeper. So why is depth a keeper? There's something in depth there's 2 ingredients in depth that are extremely expensive for me to get. Okay, one is called orris butter. Orris butter is from the iris plant. And did you know that orris root absolute? I don't know if you're interested in any of this, but I wanted to tell you because I think your tools are really special this month, and I really wanted to make sure you knew that before we finish the month so that you keep going with them. There's some crazy important ingredients in here. Orris butter, orris root, which is the same thing, is very sweet, kind of jammy. It smells like jam a little bit. It's very, it's a very unique floral from any other florals I've ever smelled. It's one of my favorite things in the world. I never have much of it because it's so expensive. It's one of the rarest. Orris root and oud are the 2 most expensive ingredients a perfumer can put into their blends, other than some of the rare absolutes like Champaka's crazy expensive, right? And jasmine's expensive. Okay, cool. So it's got orris butter. What does orris do? It attracts love. A little bit at my third eye and at my ankles, right? So it's spelled orris. Thank you, Ida, for asking. ORRIS, root. Or orris butter, which is what's in this. Yeah, we had to melt it down to cook this and make this for you. So it's got orris butter, blue lotus, buchu leaf, which we all know buchu will get you right out of your pants. You know, like buchu's for flying. It's got Kuiper, which is a blend of bergamot, labdanum, oak moss, and patchouli, and then it has pure myrrh and pure vetiver. So this is like love draw, prosperity, because orris butter can also attract prosperity, grounding, It's got all the things in it. You just sprayed it and your husband said, what is that? I love that. So anyway, these, I like I said, I don't know what you do with your tools at the end of the month, but these I think you should keep out for a little while. Use it till you're done. You know what I mean? They're worthy of participating in your collection for a little while. Okay. Flying is good. That's why if you ever see Boom Shiva incense at Sage Goddess and it sells out really fast and you're like, why did that sell out so fast? It's because a lot of my community uses that instead of wine. If you burn some Boom and you work with it, you kind of don't need that glass of wine. So it's a healthier way to relax a little bit. Yeah, I had a friend who didn't believe me. She's like, I don't believe it. I like my wine. So I burned Boom Shiva. This is a few years ago. And she was like, I feel like I had a glass of wine. And I was like, you may enjoy the taste of your wine, but it's not so great for your body. So it's kind of nice to have an alternative for that, right? I don't know if we have Boom Shiva. We don't make it that often. So I don't know. We had it like a couple months ago. So we use it sparingly. I don't even have any. Mine's all gone. The Boom is pretty good. I've told you the story about the Boom many times. I won't tell you again tonight, but if you want to know about it during the Q&A time, I'll tell you. It's one of my favorite stories of any products I've ever created. It's a funny story. Okay, so we're going to talk about candle scrying first, history of the flame, and the different parts of the candle, and alchemy, frankly, because everything about working with fire is alchemy. You got to remember that the original alchemists, fire was their primary element. They were all magicians. Of course, they were working with all of the elements because that's what magicians do. What's interesting to me about candles, uniquely, right? Although you can think about this with any you know, with burning a log in your fireplace, for example. What's interesting to me about candles is you really can't have a burning candle without air. It isn't just fire. And if you think about most of your experience with the elements, there's almost always some alchemy there, isn't there? Like, so the candle is earth, right? It's solid, it's a matter, but it requires air. It requires combustion, right, to light and stay lit. And then one of the coolest things for me about candles and candle magic is, and ever since I was a kid, I was intrigued, and even Zoe, as she was starting to work with candles in the last couple of years, she's like, so how do you explain it? That like when you're done with a candle, it's gone. There's nothing left. And I'm like, well, that's magic, right? I mean, you start out with this big, beautiful candle, and by the time you're done, there's a little pool of wax on the base, and that's it. That's part of the magic of candles, right? So it's part of what makes it a really super magical tool in your collection. Now this month we gave you, I'm over here, camera. This month we gave you, instead of a traditional candle, we gave you this beautiful tool, which I'll bring up to you now. I had so much garlic at lunch today that it's hard for me to be with me. It's literally coming out of my pores. I made myself a salad, and the chicken that I put in there, I cooked in like just a shit ton of garlic, and it literally, like, I feel like it's coming out of my skin. Greek people and garlic, like, we don't have boundaries, you know what I mean? I think the recipe called for like 4 cloves. I'm pretty sure I put like 12 in. Anyway, I'm just having a moment with myself, because if you see me kind of breathe and then go, Dave's not gonna want to talk real close to me later, if you know what I mean. He'll have to have some of the chicken first. Sorry to digress, but you know what, it's good for my health, and it's revving my metabolism and all those things, and I love to cook, but holy shit, I mean, I smell like a garlic factory. Okay. So this is what came in your set this month. This is your little Egyptian lantern, and we had these made in Egypt. Isn't it beautiful? Everybody wanted one of these. People on Instagram were so mad because I showed it, and then they couldn't get one because it was for your tools. So I was like, sorry. But we really did order these for Soul Shift, and then when you guys were excited about them, we're like, well, let's place an order for another batch to come for the website. But then, you know, it takes months and months and months because they're handmade in COVID, right? So, and then you got your tea light, So we're going to work with this flame. If you don't have this burner for any reason, just grab another candle. A beeswax candle, a jar candle will be okay. I just need you to have wax and a flame. So you can use your tea light, you can use whatever candle you've got, right? I'm glad to know I'm not alone with the garlic. But you know how it is when you've eaten a lot and nobody else has, and you just smell like intense. Okay, yeah, so whatever you've got is what you need to use tonight. Don't not continue with class because you don't have your lantern, right? Go get a candle. You probably have a tea light or a beeswax candle or a 7-day jar candle in your collection or something. So just grab a candle. It doesn't have to be a new candle. It can be an old candle. Flames are flames. But I do want you to know that we're going to be working with candle tonight, so it's important for you to have that for our experience. Yeah, and whatever you've got is just perfect. So I'm going to put that over there. And I'm going to light it to kick us off. Now that in the diffuser is gold perfume. Somebody was mentioning last night that they were, the perfume that we made last night, which I love mine so much. I haven't named it because I'm not quite there yet with it. I'm still like getting to know it, kind of. And it's still changing. It takes perfume 24 to 48 hours to settle, right? They call it settling or they call it curing. Mine is not cured yet. And I know that because it keeps changing. Like every time I smell it, it smells different. So probably tomorrow I'll be able to name it, which is kind of nice to do that at the full moon. But anyway, I'm not putting this into my diffuser because I have gold in my diffuser, and that's all the gold I have. I'm out of every other bottle of gold, and I don't want to dilute it. So I will be burning this with gold in it until my gold perfume is out, and then I'll... Yeah, I bought this on Etsy because it probably won't surprise you, but there's a lot of Sage Goddess stuff in my house right now. And so I keep, when my soul shift tools come home, I put them on this tray, and then I move this tray into because I have a little closet in the hallway here, which is all SG. It's actually kind of magical. I've decorated it. It's pretty. It's got things hanging. It's got a piece of sage from my dad's plant in the old building hanging as like a part of the decoration. Anyway, I take this tray and put it back in there and then pull it out so that my soul shift tools are always together. And it looked like an emerald tablet to me. There's a lady on Etsy who makes them, and I just thought it was really pretty and very functional too. So it's kind of neat, right? It all fits on there, and I'm just going to use that for the year to take my trays back and forth. It's resin, like organite, and it's got crystals in it. She did a really nice job, and she put gold leaf on there and stuff. I don't know. I like to shop on Etsy when I'm looking for practical things. I know I could have bought just a breakfast tray or something on Amazon, but I thought it was better to give that sale to an artist. Isn't it pretty? So yeah, and I can find it if you want the link. Not right now, but like tonight, I can put the link in the group if you'd like to see the Etsy shop I went to. But there's a shit ton of these on Etsy. If you look up gemstone resin tray on Etsy, oh my God, get ready to go down a rabbit hole because it literally seems like everybody and their mother is making gemstone resin trays. I would not recommend that as a career path for you. It's a crowded space. But some people are better at them than others, right? So anyway, I'll share that with you later. Okay. Gold perfume should be back soon, by the way. We just had to get the ingredients. Gold has pure oud in it. It has pure mushroom absolute from France. It has a pure tuberose from Southeast Asia. And that's what makes the magic of gold. So I had to get the exact oud because there's different ouds, right? Different ages, different locations, different parts of Southeast Asia. They all kind of smell different. It has to be that oud, and then tuberose, and then it has to be that mushroom, which comes from the central and southern France. So anyway, we're working on it at some point. Okay, so candle scrying. Here's what's interesting about candle scrying from my perspective, okay? Candle scrying, I've been working with different teachers in what I would call the shamanic space for the past 20 years or so. People who would consider themselves shaman, right? None of them have ever talked about candles in our practice, ever. This is not, at least in my experience, this is not something that is incorporated into what we would call a traditional shamanic experience. Where I was taught most of what I know was in my pagan training, which was the first real formal structured spiritual training I had between the ages of 17 and a half to 20 years old. Now, you do find it in the Norse tradition, right? I'm talking about North American, Central American, South American shamanism. Those people have not incorporated it, or like they don't do candle scrying. You know what I mean? Like if I was to go to one of them and say, hey, can we do some candle scrying? They would probably find it interesting, but they wouldn't go, oh yeah, let's do candle scrying. I think it's just a different tradition. Now, they do talk about fire ceremony, right? They do talk about Tatawari, and they do talk about which grandfather fire, right, which is the first shaman, was the shaman of fire. And they do talk about fire lines and how to set fire lines and the element of fire and in the medicine wheel. So I'm not saying they don't talk about fire. It's just the idea of looking at a flame and casting from it, the idea of looking at a flame and doing divination from it, is just not something that, at least in my experience with all those people, which has been pretty intimate over all those years, hasn't come up. Well, so that's what I'm saying. The ones that I have worked with have not done fire scrying, but they've done fire offerings, fire ceremony, but not divination. Does that make sense? But that's because a lot of these people, because I see Francine's comment, but at least the ones I've worked with have not. Now, I'm not saying you'll never meet a shaman who does fire scrying. I'm just saying, in my experience, not for divination. Fire in most of those traditions, at least for the 20 odd people I've worked with, has been an element that you work with in a particular way for a particular energy, particular spirits, and at particular times of year to bring in energy into your ceremony or to go through certain kinds of initiations, right? So I'm kind of reaching back into the earlier part of my training for tonight's class. I think it's really interesting. Some of you are pagan, so this is going to feel really comfortable and sort of second hand to you, right? This is going to feel very familiar. And the same goes, I think, for the Celtic traditions. There's a lot of candle scrying in the Celtic traditions. And what's interesting is, this is not the case, right? Interesting, Colin's echoing that. This is not the case, though, when we look back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, and then I always like to go back to Sumeria and Mesopotamia because they predate Greece and Rome, right? We always think of Greece and Rome as being like the ancient civilizations, but they're not the oldest, right? So my feeling is this was a kind of a northern tradition, probably mostly Celtic, that eventually got co-opted into what we call witchcraft today. And then, but my outstanding question on the subject is, to what extent were the Celts influenced by the Sumerians? And could there have been, because there's so many different interesting similarities between the way Celts scry with candles and wax, and even the symbolism that they look for, and a lot of what we know came out of Sumeria and Mesopotamia. So that may be too much of a rabbit hole for some of you. That might not completely interest you, but I love history, and my path really in life is to find the connection points. I will always tell you that. I'm so curious about how crystals got from India to Egypt. I'm so curious how fire magic began in the deserts of Mesopotamia and somehow also emerged in Ireland, right? And so I'm interested in all of that. And then to what extent is modern witchcraft practices of scrying, are they more Celtic? Are they more Egyptian? Are they more Mesopotamian? And wouldn't it be fun to be able to look at something relatively young, like modern witchcraft, and be able to trace its roots back to what most of us think is the first civilization on the planet, going back to Sumer and to all of that. So anyway, that's kind of where my thinking goes and sort of my curiosity points around this, because I think we have more in common than what separates us, right? So I'm always looking for those little interstices, those little overlap points. Now, what we're talking about tonight primarily is the watching of the flame, and that really did begin in Egypt. And one of the most interesting pieces of information I was ever taught about this is that this was, and I almost have like a memory of doing this. Every night in Egypt, at this time of day actually, because we're about an hour from the start of sunset right now. This is the time when the torches would be lit in the temples, right? And just having read so many accounts of this, I find it fascinating that what would have happened at this time of day is that the high priest and or high priestess, and a lot of times there was a male and a female, and they would light the torches on either side of the entrance to the temple, bringing in masculine energy and bringing in feminine energy, right? And there was a point, and usually this was done in some kind of a procession. And so there would be the priest and priestess carrying the torches, placing them at the entrance to the temple, and then there would be the sort of a processional behind them, and people carrying drums and carrying bells, and we've talked about the instruments that they played during those processionals too. And then there would be a moment where everybody would stop, at least some of the time, and especially on high holidays or at the full moon, everybody would stop and watch the flame as a message from the gods about, the harvest ahead, or the ceremony for tonight, or however they discerned or interpreted the messages. And so we've given you some, actually I'm not sure if we gave you the list. I don't think we gave you the full list. Alexis, did we give them the Celtic candle information? Strong flame, weak flame, jumping flame. Did we give that to them? If not, I can read it off tonight. But for some reason I know we gave you this. We gave you some notes for tonight. We gave you, and handouts, we gave you this, which talks about your smoke. If your smoke rises up, or if it goes north, south, east, or west. And then we gave you this in case you don't have a candle, but it's better if you can look at a live flame, I would say. Yeah. Are you visualizing it? It's kind of neat, right? It would be an amazing thing. But there's part of me, I'll tell you, every time I visualize that line going into the entrance of the temple, there's some part of me that's like, been there. It's not just like visualizing, it's almost a remembering. And I feel like I could almost remember it from different okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll read it off to you, by the way, and tonight, and then it'll be in your notes after class tonight. So that's in my notes. I'll be reading it to you. Okay. Yeah. So what you have for tonight is the candle scrying worksheet, where you can kind of journal about your experiences from class. The smoke worksheet. In addition to your worksheets from the beginning of the month. So you should have those worksheets. If you don't have those, Alexis will guide you in the feed. Okay. So following ancient Egypt, then, we know that it was also a Celtic tradition and again, I can't trace that line for you. I hope to be able to one day. I hope to be able to line up all those dots and say, okay, after Egypt it went here, and then after here it went there. My best guess to you is that it went from probably Egypt to Greece, Rome, and north. My best guess. Because we know that the Greeks and Romans were scrying with candles too. And we know that in the Temple of Apollo, candle magic was very important. The candles were lit and extinguished ceremonially at certain times of day, also on certain occasions when the oracle was reading, which was not all the time. The Pythia was only there in the oracle at Delphi, Apollo's temple, certain times of the year. So we know that one of the ways that people recognized that she was there and active and prophesying was through the candles that were lit. So yeah, so we know that that's kind of probably generally how the practice continued. And we also know that in a lot of the Celtic traditions, Like I said, modern Druid practice incorporates candles and to some extent candle scrying. And certainly, like I said, the Wiccan and pagan path, it's still a very common practice to do candle scrying. What's interesting to me is scrying and divination, like even in my family, we would drink Turkish coffee at the holidays. And I'm going to be teaching you Turkish coffee readings. Do you guys make Turkish coffee? It's one of the best things on the planet. I have all the stuff downstairs to do it. I don't make it very often. In Middle Eastern culture, the joke is that's how you get married. Is that you the mother, if you're a woman, the mother of the man you're going to marry. There's a real heterosexist sort of assumption there, but the mother of the man you're going to marry, you have to make her Turkish coffee. And if it's not good, it's not good. You know what I mean? But making the perfect cup of Turkish coffee takes a lot of practice. It looks like it's really, really simple. I have some tips and techniques I can teach you if we ever do that together. But anyway, so in my family, when you're done drinking your coffee, you would take it down to like about that much and swirl your cup around and then kind of show the cup to the older women, and they would make meaning of it. You know, they would look and they would read the grounds and kind of see what was in there and tell your future. There's some great Turkish coffee readers here in LA, like really super gifted, incredibly psychic. We had one who used to come to Sage Goddess. I had my whole team stay late one night. I think Alexis was around then. And she did Turkish coffee readings for everybody. Super, super fun. So yeah, you can swirl it around, you can flip it, you know, and dump the grounds out on your saucer. She does it by kind of swirling the cup and like letting the grounds kind of get all around the sides. You know, so they pull up and make this really interesting kind of yeah. And so any coffee that you make that has grounds, when you're done, you can totally do scrying with the grounds. Some people do it with tea too. You know, if you make your tea with loose tea, and sometimes there's little bits and pieces when you're done, you can do some scrying with that too. Okay, so I think every culture does scrying. We know that the Mexicans today, Aztecs, we know that the Aztecs scried with obsidian. We know 3,000%, we have records. So they would take these really big sheets of obsidian, polish them really clean, and scry into those. That's why we still use obsidian scrying mirrors, right? We've had them at Sage Goddess. You guys have some in your own collection from other places. Those are fun. You can use them for a lot of different things, but they're called scrying discs or scrying mirrors. You can also paint a mirror, you know, black and scry in it that way. I'm sharing all these alternatives with you because it isn't just candles, and I think every culture has their own practices of divination. It's just whether they do fire divination or not. And my point to you tonight is I think it's hard to say really where this came from, how it got here, and what the true authentic origin story of it is, because it's got kind of a muddled history. Yeah, but it's one of my favorite things to explore and to learn about too. So tonight we're going to do, I'm going to show you a couple different forms of candle scrying. You can read the flame, you can read the smoke, or you can read the wax. You can read the flame, you can read the smoke, you can read the wax. And that all of that is considered a fire reading, even though the smoke is technically air and the wax is technically earth, right? Especially if it's beeswax and something organic and pure from the planet, right? Yeah, I've given you a lot of little breadcrumbs to look at, so if you want to go down some rabbit holes and do some research later, you can have a lot of fun. And buy yourself a Turkish coffee set on Amazon. I promise you it's so super easy. If you guys decide you're into it and you want to learn how to make Turkish coffee, I'll do a tutorial. Like, I'll go live in my kitchen and make it for you. But you would need to get the Turkish coffee in the little pot and the little cup, you know what I mean? And you'll want to get yourself some really nice quality sugar cubes to do it authentically. I like to use like really raw sugar, brown sugar cubes, 1 or 2 in there. So anyway, we can talk about that later. Okay. In a flame, you have different components of your flame. Let me just show you with the flame. be easier to show you with a bigger candle. Because chemists really distinguish, right? Yeah, if you can't drink coffee, it's okay. And like I said, it might not be of interest to you guys, so if it is, great, and if not, you know, we don't have to do that. It's not part of our curriculum this year. Chemists really distinguish between different parts of a flame. If you're looking at your flame from an actual chemical standpoint, combustion standpoint, what's happening. So they call the top, I'm going to straighten out my wick here. I'm going to make you a real nice flame. Okay, so the top part of the flame, like the uppermost top of the flame is called the yellow. And then you have what's called the halo, which is the little kind of rounded part of the darkness within the flame. I don't know if you can see it on mine very clearly. Like I can see it looking at it, but sometimes there's things that the camera misses. But if you're looking at yours, do you see how you have a real gold band? And then you have where the gold meets the darkest part, that's called the halo. And then you have what some people call the dark, or they call it the indigo, which is there's a part of it right there that's kind of a really dark blue. And then what they call the blue is where it actually connects to the base of the wick. Yeah, I'm not good about trimming my wicks. I'm not. I should. I'm just not good at it. But you should trim your wicks. Do as I say, not as I do. That's right. And so it gets successively hotter as it gets to the blue. So, but what I really wanted to reinforce to you tonight is the alchemy of the candle. What keeps this candle lit is air. So, and that's why I was saying that candles are pure alchemy. They actually it's two elements in one, right? It's the element of air, which allows the flame to exist. What would happen if I put a cloche on this? You know, right over top of it, what would happen? I would extinguish it, right? Now it might take 5-10 seconds chemically to extinguish the flame. If I put a cloche over it, you know, like a glass lid over it. Why does that happen? You actually have to have fresh moving air to keep a candle lit. It requires fresh air. It requires the movement of air. And I always feel like that too. I feel like I require fresh air to stay lit. You know what I mean? I feel like if I don't have fresh air, I'm not burning bright. And as a double fire sign, that's probably why I burn candles every day, because I really do burn a candle every day, at least one. I probably burn closer to 2 or 3 candles a day. And I always have to be reminded. Dave will be like, blow out that candles. I can hear him. And now Zoe's doing the same thing. Blow out your candles. Because she's not good at remembering either. It's true. Air is fire food. I really like that. It's very, very true. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you about that. Okay, no. So let's do a little candle scrying. That was the conclusion of our intellectual portion of the evening. My 7-Ups are really good tonight. I opened the can right before class, and it's so fresh. Okay. So one of the things, we're going to do the flame scrying first. And we did give you a worksheet about this that kind of explains the process for you. What do we tell you to do? Stare into the flame. After a while, you're going to start to notice shadows in your peripheral vision. So I love being in a dark room. It's one of the reasons I painted this room almost black, because I just, at night, I don't have to worry about excess light messing up scrying. That's one of the reasons I like a dark room. So what you're trying to do is really allow your vision to fall soft. But you're going to gaze at this flame. So I'm going to gaze at it with you. You can gaze at mine if you want. That way you have something to work with if you don't have a candle. If you don't have at least one candle, though, get one for your collection. Even if you're not a fire element person, it's good to have at least one, even in an emergency. You know what I mean? Even if you just get like a You don't have to get a sage goddess candle, but I would have at least a 7-day candle in your home. That way, if you want to light it to say prayers for someone, I think having at least one candle in your home is a really good idea at all times, especially if you're practicing magic, because it instantly brings fire energy into your space, and those are energies of transformation. They can be very protective, you know, and so it's just an instant way of invoking that energy. It's very powerful. So what we're going to do is we're going to gaze at the flame. I'm not going to look at the camera. I'm looking at the flame. You look at the flame too. And I want you to really allow yourself to relax. If you've got a bunch of thoughts in your head, notice them, but kind of tell yourself you can come back to them later. You know what I mean? So, because you don't want to force yourself to pay attention, but at the same time, you want to kind of remind your conscious mind that it can take a break for right now. And so some people scry by looking in the flame and they'll start to see things, but I scry, and the traditional method is to start to notice what's happening in your peripheral vision, which means out here and out here, but not by looking at it. You're noticing what's happening in the periphery. I've got like lights in here, you know, shining on the computer so that my screen is bright. Sort of interrupts the shadows. And just see what comes. And sometimes you might hear things or feel things or sense things that come in your awareness. Maybe it's not even visual. And don't discount that, you know. If you're clairsentient or clairaudient, you might start to hear things or feel things when you're relaxing, and it's okay. That's information too. Too. That's right, Scara. It's very true. Now, let me tell you what the actual flame and its activity, let me tell you what that means. This is the list I was talking to Alexis about. So you ready? This will be in your notes. You do not need to take notes on this. Especially if you're new and you don't know that, we take your notes for you, because I just want you to relax and enjoy. So don't scramble to remember things, or you can go back and read your notes later. Just notice your flame for right now as I'm reading them, okay? If you have a really strong flame, in the Celtic tradition, these are the strict kind of Celtic interpretations, but I'll tell you mine too. It just means the energy is open, right? Now I will tell you too, I opened a circle before class. I forgot to tell you that. It takes extra time, and sometimes it's important to do that with you, sometimes it's not. I had been doing a little scrying of my own before class because I was playing and practicing, and I didn't want to do that in a space where I hadn't opened a circle. So I've already opened a circle, which includes you. You can open your own circle if you want. I do like to open a circle before I do scrying. I will close the circle with you, but I opened it before you got here. Oh, isn't that funny that Casey just asked that? I didn't even see that he asked that. Yeah, so I opened my circle about, like, right after the readings, because I was playing and practicing a little bit. So that was what, like, hour and a half ago? So you're good. I love that Casey asked that, and I didn't see it until after I answered him. And that tells you we're on the same page, and you're skilled, which is great. Okay, so strong flame, the energy's strong, the circle's open, right? A weak flame can mean that you're facing opposition or resistance. Now, I tend not to buy into weak flame, somebody's opposing you. Like, I don't like a lot of that. It's a little bit of like fear-mongering stuff, and in my experience, it's not always accurate. But, you know, I give you the interpretations for what that's worth for you. Okay. A jumping flame, strong emotions. Is it interesting? Yeah. I'm going to grab I really want to do this with my lantern. So I want to show you that one for the purposes of holding a bigger flame so that you can see it a little bit more clearly, but I really want to use my little lantern for this because I want to practice. This is what I was working with earlier. It's a tamer flame, but in a way it's a better test. You know what I mean? A strong flame, in my opinion, is not too small, not too big, and steady. And kind of full. Like, this is a pretty strong flame for a little tea light. It's not wimpy, it's not going out. The other one is moving in all kinds of directions. I also try to shut my air off before I do this, because otherwise you don't know what's your AC or your heater versus the energy that's in the room, right? You got a Pisces flame and she's jumping. Oh yeah. Okay. Fast burn means fast results. Have you ever had a candle burn so fast? I have had that happen with like attraction candles. I really have. Where all of a sudden it's like I light the candle and like it burns all the way down really fast, and then the thing that I was trying to attract would come quickly too. Thought that was interesting. Your tea light's out? Yeah, mine's doing okay. It's holding up. I mean, it's not super strong, but it's a decent little flame. I see you, Cindy. Okay, slow burn can mean the opposite. Results are going to take time, right? Yeah, could take a little more time than you're anticipating. Some people say when the flame is really flickering that the spirits are close by. If that's true, I got a whole bunch of friends in the room, which isn't much of a surprise given what I do in this room. This room is like nothing but ceremony. Okay. If you cannot blow the flame out, have you ever had that happen? Because I've had that happen where you're blowing, and it will not go out. If you ever have the experience of not being able to blow out a flame, the Celtic tradition says the spirit guides are trying to have a conversation with you. And the conversation is not over, darling. So you're not going anywhere. And I think that's an interesting theory, right? Oh, mine did go out. Well, poof. They don't have a lot of wisdom for what it means when it goes out. Except that I better get a lighter. Tea lights are trickier for this, I find, than like the jar candles, because the flames are a little, you know, they're not as strong sometimes. I know. What is going out means spirit guides are abandoning me? Okay. Now, when you blow out your candle, this worksheet you have. So you can read the flame, and then you can read the smoke, and you can read the wax, which I'll show you in just a minute. Did yours go out too? Uh-huh. Oh, I like that. Chanel said, I'll read her comment to you. When the flame goes out before the candle is burned down, you have the answer that you seek. Isn't that really beautiful? Thank you, Chanel, for that offering. No, I was kidding. I don't think my spirit guides would abandon me. If they were going to do that, they would have done it in my 20s. If my spirit guides have hung on this long, I think they're going to go for the whole enchilada. I'm much better behaved now than I was 20 years ago, right? Yeah, our tea lights are really nice. They burn a lot longer than like when I was in college. I had no money and at all, but I really liked candles, and so I would go to IKEA and get the big package of the IKEA tea lights, and I think those burned for like 15 minutes. You're asking about whether you should snuff the flame out or blow it out. I will tell you, I have always blown out my candles. I don't snuff my candles out. And I don't do the fancy little snickerdoodle that some people do. I don't do that. I give it a nice blow. I'll blow mine if you blow yours. And then you want to watch the smoke. Now again, with a tea light, you may not have as much smoke. Mine went up and slightly north. I just made a note of that. And then I'm going to blow the other candle out. And then you can watch. North. And skyward. That's north. Northwest, let's say. Yeah. You'll get more, I will tell you, in a pagan, for example, or when I was in my Wiccan program, they offered a lot more wisdom about what it means to snuff a flame versus with your fingers versus blowing it. And if you blow it, you dissipate the energy and you disrupt the intention and all of that. So, but that's not what this is. So I would say if you really want to get more into nuts and bolts of specific things around wisdom that I think resides more in that tradition, then it probably would be good to pursue something like a focus training like that. I remember we spent, I don't even remember how long, a lot of time talking about things like that in the Wiccan program I was in. So if you're interested in more of the nuts and bolts of that, I don't know where to refer you, because I don't keep in touch with people in those circles, but there might be people here who have particular programs that they like to recommend people to, but and that's where you'll find more of that kind of insight, because there are strong feelings in that particular community around what it means to blow out a candle versus pinch it versus snuff it and do you snuff it with copper versus snuffing it with silver versus, I remember going through all the metals, and each one of the metals has an alignment to a planet. So if you snuff it with tin versus snuffing it with copper, then it's this planet and not that planet, and is it that aligned to the sign that the moon is in? And you can really take the levels and layers of correspondences to a whole new level if you're interested in that. That's always and in hoodoo and voodoo too, Colin mentioned. So there's lots of traditions. If this kind of piques your interest and you want to go down those pathways, there's always different ways for you to go. The oil smoke too. Mine did not release much smoke, but if yours did, you can read the same way. Do you know what I mean? You can read the smoke the same way. So if the smoke goes directly skyward, the energy's clear, nothing else to do. If it goes north, you've got the wisdom you need. Mine went north and west, so the emotional purification is complete, which is really interesting. And then in the east, if it moves to the east, it means the energy is clear, or it's moved through. And then in the south, regeneration, transmutation, sending love, where healing is needed. So that's why I wanted to say that. It's not my particular practice or tradition, but like Lori said, in pagan traditions, you would not blow the candle out. So that, it's just good for you to, and I'll tell you this, I think if you're gonna work in spirituality, especially at this time in our history where there are so many different pathways that people are actively pursuing. For a while it was like if you were working magic, there was probably only 2 or 3 kinds of magic you might be practicing, but we've become so global and esoteric that I honestly really think it's good to know as much as you can about different traditions. And that's why I incorporate it, even though this is not a witchcraft program. I do sometimes mention things because I still think it's good for you to know. And then I also mention it so that if you go, hey, that's really interesting to me, gives you a little bit of insight, like maybe that's a path you should explore. Or I'll mention a little bit about Buddhism, or I'll mention a little bit about Karo shamanism, or I'll mention a little bit about, the mysteries, right? The mystery traditions from Egypt or Greece or Rome, because there are people who still practice, still teach, and I think the more you know, the better practitioner you are. And it keeps you open-minded and aware too. You know what I mean? Yeah. Accurate. It's just good to know. And I find that when people are like, oh, I don't know anything about that, and they just move on, I'm always like, yeah, but aren't you at least a little curious? Like, come on, man, right? Like, don't you at least want to have, you don't have to practice, but a little bit of awareness is nice, right? So that you don't, like, what if I didn't know that about Wicca, and tonight I said, no, you should always blow your candles out, and meanwhile we've got Wiccans and pagans in the feed who are like, you know, that's why I think it's worth knowing your way around things, you know. And I'll tell you something too, every tradition is worthy of respect. And I wasn't raised that way. My mom was like Christianity or the highway. My mom, when I was young, did not believe every tradition was worthy of respect. I think every tradition is worthy of respect. Whether you decide to practice it or not is up to you. But I think every tradition is worthy of at least understanding the broad parameters of it and respecting it, because they all have energy and they all have a lineage and they all have, you know, they all have wisdom. Whether it resonates with you or not, that's a different matter, right? Yeah, but it'll allow you to move more fluidly through your spiritual life if you know enough to be baseline respectful of the different practices. And then I learn too, all the time. People will say, oh, did you know this, that, or the other? And I'll say, oh, I didn't know that, but now I do. And then when you know better, you do better. You know what I mean? So it's just a process. And I mean, I'll be 50 in 2 years, right? So I'm still at a place where I'm learning and I'm absorbing, but I'm also always paying attention and trying to learn more too, right? So I think it's a process, yeah. No, it's true. Like Saya said, who wants to live in a hallway? I mean, yeah, and you end up, it's like a hall of mirrors where just everything is what you believe and everybody believes what you believe. That's boring as fuck to me. You know what I mean? I actually like it when people don't believe what I believe, or when there's like a give and a take of information, or did you know this? Well, I know that kind of thing. Like, because I feel like I develop, you know, neural pathways. I feel like I really believe in this concept of neuroplasticity. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's this idea that as you learn new things, your brain continues to develop neural pathways, and it keeps you young. That's why, you know, my dad does Sudoku for that. Like he's trying to create neuroplasticity. But I do it through ideas and through wisdom and through reading books and asking questions. And I think it's so important for you, right? Nobody wants a echo chamber. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do tonight, this wasn't supposed to be part of our class, but so if you don't like it, sorry, it wasn't supposed to be part of our class at all. But I would have felt remiss in my duties if I hadn't shown you wax reading. Now, we're going to do this in a new moon ceremony this year, too. So when we do it there, just act like it's all kinds of new and interesting to you. I'm not into Sudoku, I'll tell you that right now. My dad does it like it's his life's mission, and I don't get it. I would lose my mind. If you told me that tomorrow, Friday, I have to spend the whole day doing Sudoku, I'd lose my mind. Okay. So what you do is you take I like to take a little white bowl, and fill it with water, like something like just a little white ceramic dish. If you have a ramekin, if you cook a lot, you probably have ramekins. And you can scry with your oil too. It's the same process. So if you take this is just water in a little ceramic dish, okay? So if you want to try it first with your oil, what you're going to do, I don't want to use too much of my gold. I'm going to be very, very, very gentle with this. I do drop by drop, so you can just put a drop of your oil in. Oop, I did 3. And then I move it, and you can go around like almost in the direction. So that was sort of at the east, south, west, and north. I wish I had a camera over me. Dave installed one, but I don't know if it's connected. Let me see. I think he might have. Sorry, I'm not trying to make you dizzy. I don't know if that goes over. No, I don't think that camera's connected. That's a bummer. I'm starting to get fancy with my setup here, kids. So what you want to do is look into your, it's harder to see with the oil. When I do the wax, you'll be able to see it a little bit more clearly. You want to look in and you want to look for I know, we're at that place, honey. And you want to look for patterns, and you'll see it, especially if you put a nice bright light on it, if you put the flashlight of your phone on it, and you can look for patterns where the oil bubbles connect. Sometimes you'll see shapes in them. Sometimes you'll see letters. I see a letter B, and I see the number 3. Yeah, so that's how you can do that. I did. I used readers, honey. I'm kind of into them, and honestly, Dave loves when I have my readers on. But Dave is very attracted to, like the librarian types. If you ever ask Dave what he finds attractive about me, he'll tell you it's my brain. He really likes that I was a professor and have a PhD. He likes really smart people and to have like deep intellectual conversations. And if you can't talk to your partner, I mean, eventually that's all you have really is your conversation, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do now, this is a little bit more exciting. I'm going to do this over some paper like a smart person. So I end up with wax on my carpet. Is you're going to drip some wax into the water. And you're just going to go around and drip. Some people like to close their eyes when they're dropping the wax into the water. Let me show you what that looks like. Do you see how it beads up in the water like that? Yeah, it beads up in the water, which is kind of nice. I have to keep them down my nose because I can't see everything with them on. And then again, you want to look into the water and see if you start to see formations or numbers or letters or patterns. I see a heart. I see a peacock. I really do. It's like a bird. It looks like a bird with a big splash of feathers behind it. The bird even has like little feet. It's possible I've lost my mind. That actually always is a possibility. You see a cat in mine? Can you see mine? I'm trying to bring it where you can see it. Let me see if this camera is better for that. Now it looks like a lady with a wedding dress on or something. You kind of see that? I don't want to turn it. Did you see it? There's like a woman. Her head looks like it's at the bottom of the screen. That's interesting, right? Super fun, right? And now she's changing again. Do you see? Look, I'm here to make you laugh. Sanity's overrated. When I was really, really sane, I wasn't that happy. Yeah, a woman, a cat, a flamingo, a dinosaur, a peacock. And that's why scrying is interesting, because it's really open to your interpretation, too. All right, well, I'm going to... You saw a Spanish woman dancing? Yeah, it kind of looked like that, right? I was thinking it looked like a bride, because it looked like she had a train, but it could have just been a Spanish woman dancing, too. And a duck. All right. So that concludes our candle scrying information for tonight. I'm going to leave plenty of time for questions, but I want to close the circle and release the guides. So I want to thank all of our guides for coming closer as we release them with gratitude. I welcomed in all 7 directional guides today, so I'm going to release all 7. So I'm going to begin by releasing the guides and guardians of the lower realm, the middle realm, and the upper realm. Thank you for connecting us in our divination to the mineral and bone kingdom, to the present moment, to the plant kingdom, to the human kingdom, the animal kingdoms, for connecting us to each other across space and time. And then we want to thank and release the guides and guardians of the upper realm, angelic realms. And then thanking and releasing the guides and guardians of the north. Thank you for, as always, being a steady, present patient presence with us. And we release you with gratitude to the guides and the guardians of the west. Thank you for helping us dream into some new visions today, to discover a new tool for emotional healing and wellness and information that we can use to guide us. We release you with gratitude. And to the guides and the guardians of the south, thank you for teaching us about fire element magic tonight, for holding us close as we did our fire magic tonight, and learning about fire and how it brings such magic to our ceremonies and our spaces. We release you with gratitude. And then to the guides and the guardians of the east, thank you for opening us to some new wisdom today. For some of you, this might have been a completely new divination tool, or maybe something new about a practice you've already been working with for a long time. We give thanks for new wisdom, new information, new perspectives tonight, and we release the guides and guardians of the east. And with that, our official work of the evening is complete. And now I want to really dedicate the next 45 minutes or hour to you and to any questions that you have about anything at all, really. I know, can you believe that? That was a quick hour. We blinked and it was over. Oh, sure. No, Linda, don't worry. You're actually kind of coming in right at the conclusion of the candle work, which you can go back and watch later, but at the beginning of our just hangout time, Q&A time. So your time is kind of nice. And then you can always go back and watch the, the candle portion later if you feel called to it, yeah. Do you still see? Hold on. Let me go back up into the feed here. I know. Are you supposed to bury candle wax? I have to say I don't know. I haven't heard people talk a lot about burying candle wax. I tend to bury everything. In fact, I have a whole jar of ash in the hallway that needs to be buried. I collect my ash little by little, and it's actually time for me to fertilize my plants, and so I actually take it out to the east and I fertilize my white sage plants with it, because white sage plants love their own ash. It contains all the micronutrients it needs to stabilize its root system. So it's actually really, really good for your plants to give your ash back. And I don't think it's wrong at all to bury your or to give the ash back, and burying your wax makes sense too. The meaning of the shapes, I don't know that we went into the meaning of the shapes as much tonight. I can give you a high level, we do have that. I'm going to give you some high level interpretations of meanings, and then our team will put these into the notes for you. So again, I'll give you kind of high level, and then, but what I'll tell you is, the only reason I'm hesitating on the shape information, everybody's going to have a different perspective on the shapes. So take what I give you. If you like it, great. If you don't, pitch it. If you see an arrow of any kind, it usually means there's going to be movement, or you're moving in the right direction. If you see cats, it's mystery. This is why I'm like, I don't know about this. If you see a circle, it's a good sign. It means there's good energy, there's good momentum, you're safe, you're protected. If you see coins, it means wealth. I've never seen a coin. If you see a crescent moon, that's divine feminine. I do believe that's accurate. If you see a crown, it usually means leadership. If you see a diamond, it can mean partnership. I really dislike the idea that diamonds mean partnership. But that's me resisting all things like, I think if people want to have a diamond ring, I think they should buy it for themselves. I don't think they should like wait to get married to do that. So, but I have very contrarian thoughts about traditional things. Eggs mean rebirth. Eyes can mean introspection. Feathers mean independence. Frogs can mean money. Heart means love. Earth-shattering wisdom here for you. Hourglasses mean the time is coming. Leaves mean success. Lighthouses mean guidance. Mask can mean a secret. Squares mean caution sometimes. Triangles can mean caution too sometimes, or creation. Stars mean wishes fulfilled. Sun means happiness. And trees mean unity or connection. New partnerships emerging. It's real Hallmark holiday. Honestly, that's not the depth of wisdom I like to bring you in Soul Shift. That was kind of Mickey Mouse. Heart means love. But it's better than nothing, right? I mean, at least it gives us kind of a baseline. Okay. Can you talk more about ceremony you do when burying your ash? Yeah, so it's really, really simple. Almost everything I do is really simple. And for a long time, I was sort of critical of myself for that because, you see people on YouTube or you see things where you go to, high ceremonies and, and sometimes I do put on a big production for ceremonies. And a lot of you have been with me in person for things, and I know how to do a big to-do, but day to day, I'm really busy. I have a really demanding job. I've got 2 kids mostly at home with me all the time who need me pretty constantly. And a lot of other, things going on. So I don't have, on a daily basis, hours to do ceremonies. So I try to, so the reason I was telling you I keep it in a jar out there is I try to collect it and wait for a time when I do have some time. Because I really do like to, first I set an intention that the ashes will be received back into the earth with the love that I offer them through, right? And I do spend some time really thinking about the sacrifice that those plants made and giving thanks for that. And I'm so mindful all the time when we're burning our plants because they're all endangered, right? White sage is endangered, Palo Santo is endangered. Copal isn't really endangered, but it's still very sacred, and I think it's good to be cautious in how much you use. So I actually haven't produced as much ash this year as I did last year, partly because we were also always burning double the amount at the shop. Now it's just me at my house, so I only have what I burn personally. But I have the jar out there is about a half gallon that's going to go back into the earth. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning on the full moon. So, and I'm going to scatter it. And but first it's about giving thanks for the plant and the sacrifice that it made for you and your ceremony and your home. And then it's about, I like to sit and just take a moment of reflection about what that really means, where those plants came from. And all of our sage comes from this really beautiful farm, so I think back to that farm and how gorgeous it is, and the people who grow it, who are really amazing, and just give thanks for them and send blessings and wishes of blessings upon them for bringing those plants to us and taking such good care of them. And then I blow my life force on them, and then I scatter them at the base of my white sage plants. Focusing on the eastern plants because it's nice to return ash to the earth in the east. It represents the beginning of a new cycle for that plant. But I do try to make sure that all of my white sage plants get some of that ash because they bloom big. My white sage plants, and my dad says the same thing, he's always like, do you have any extra ash? I'm like, you should burn some, Dad, then you'd have your whole own supply of ash. But my dad's like, no, they really do bloom bigger when they get their own ash back. It's a pretty remarkable thing. Yeah. Ashes can go in houseplants for sure. I mean, they're micronutrients, guys. I keep a little tiny jar, like this big, that I don't bury, because sometimes I like to anoint with ash. At my third eye, the traditional indigenous way of anointing with ash is third eye at the solar plexus, which is 2 fingers above your belly button, and then on the tops of your feet. But sometimes it's nice to anoint with ash. It's very sacred. Then, then if you have a little bit laying around, you can always do that if you feel called to it. You can put a little bit of ash in your incense blends. Sometimes I'll do that. If I've made a really special incense, I will save some of the ash from that and put just a touch of it back into the new batch of incense, because it kind of, there's an energy line there, you know what I mean? And it kind of keeps the batches connected. Oh yeah, your ash from your charcoal is fine too. All of it. I just, my thing is, don't throw it away, because it is actually really useful. And the more you get used to taking it out, now when I do, it's always like, oh my God, are you taking the ash out? I want to go. It's like, wait for me, because it's kind of fun to sprinkle it, and it teaches them about sustainability of the planet too. Like, why are we doing this? As opposed to throwing it away. It's just, because so many of you ask me, like, so how do you teach kids about magic? Things like that, teach them by doing rather than saying. You know what I mean? When she sees me doing that and she's like, why don't you just throw it away? And I get an opportunity to say, because it's sacred. And she's like, okay, I kind of get that. It teaches them that too. Does white sage like coffee grounds? I don't know. But I would recommend trying it. Use coffee grounds? Probably. They do like a nice banana peel. Do you ever take your banana peels out? My rose bushes love banana peels. So that's good too. When you were talking about, this is Danielle, when you were talking about how you went to the woman to have the cord cut, why would you just not have envisioned it, or why could you just not have envisioned it being reattached after she cut it if there's no way to reattach a cord? Danielle, I wish I had a great answer for you. I had always heard that once you cut a cord, it's very hard to reestablish it at the same place with the same intensity and the same intention. What I can tell you is, in that moment when she said it's cut, it was palpable. You know what I mean? And I tried to imagine it being put back together. I tried to imagine it going back into me and reconnecting to the other. Like, I tried to imagine all of that, and it just didn't happen. Which is why I believe in what I taught you last night, because I've had when I've had a direct lived experience of something, it's more fun to teach it, because I'm not just teaching you something from a book or from a teacher or something I learned along the way. It's like, no, I really did this thing. And like I said, again, other people may have different experiences. Somebody may say, no, you know what? I cut a cord. The next day I reestablished it and I was fine. It just wasn't my experience. And I wish I would have narrowed it. But, hindsight's really clear. And the woman who did it is great at what she does. She's great at what she does. And that's really one of her main things that she does. But holy shit. And she was really ethical. I mean, she asked me, are you sure you want to do this? Do you understand that how cords operate and everything else? And I was like, yep, got it, ready. Because you get to a point where you're real frustrated. And I just wished I'd been just a little bit more experienced. But it's okay. We live and we learn. It's a real thing. Can you talk about what you say when you call in and release the directions? This is from Melissa, when you open and close a circle. Yeah, so when I first started out, a lot of you have been with me long enough to know this. I wrote it all out. I wrote my own 4 directional invocations. In fact, the original is in the Book of Blessings and Rituals that a lot of you have. And so now I don't. I've just been doing this for so long that I kind of like to just channel it. But when I call in the directions, I really do think of them as guardians of gateways and energies, right? That there are these elementals, these beings that align themselves to earth and air and fire and water. And one of the reasons that really resonates with me is it's talked about in almost every tradition in different ways. You know what I mean? But and Plato understood it, right, when he developed the concept of the Platonic solids as these basic building blocks of life, that they align to the elements, right? So in any case, that they really are the building blocks of life, and that's the origin story of those. And I talked a little bit about this in terms of where they come from and stuff in that intro to alchemy class. So I won't repeat that for you, but beyond that story, in terms of like what I talk about when I welcome them in, is thinking about what aligns with air, what aligns with fire, what aligns with water, and what aligns with earth, and then what aligns with the upper realm, the middle realm, and the lower realm. So each element in each gateway has spirit allies, for example. Like in the east with air, it's all the birds, right? So you have hummingbird medicine there, and eagle and hawk, and then the energies are vision and clarity and spaciousness, and everything that's associated with air. Or you can talk about the lightness of a feather or the movement of the wind, and it becomes an opportunity, Melissa, really for me, for poetry. I love poetry. I write a lot of poetry. I am not a technically great poet. I took a poetry seminar, a graduate poetry seminar, and I know what really technically good poetry looks like, and it's not fun for me because there's no freedom in it. I mean, there's a little bit of freedom, but it's very like, there's certain parameters that technical poets should follow. I like to just do stream of consciousness stuff. So I kind of just breathe into like, so what feels right for air today, right? What feels right for fire today? Fire, you have snake, right? Shedding its skin, and energies of like releasing stuff that's too tight for you, right? And burning through old limited beliefs and mentalities and perspectives. And so I try to let myself just intuitively breathe into what each of the elements reflects for me energetically, and speak to that, right? Poet, and I didn't even know it, except I'm really not. But I love to write. So I just figure I do my own thing. How do you go about publishing a book? It's one of the most discouraging things to me, honestly, that I learned through the process of creating Sage Goddess. It might sound funny to you. It was always a dream as a professor to write a book, but I didn't really want to write an academic book. I wanted to write fun books. So when I founded Sage Goddess and started to write my books, which was about, 4 years ago, I had a publisher come to me and say, we would like to offer you a book contract, a multi-book contract to write about chakras and crystals and energy or whatever. Actually, I think originally it was a 2-book contract, and then I negotiated Book of Blessings into it because I wanted to finish that. And at the time, it was interesting because what she told me, and I've since heard this from other publishers too, at this point, publishers in the age of social media, at least the publishers at what they call tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, I don't know if you're familiar with what any of this means, but publishers fall into tiers. You have to have like a really substantial social media following to get a contract, because you're responsible with most publishers for a lot of your own marketing. So, and then if your book isn't successful, you don't get any more contracts. So it's kind of discouraging, because I have a lot of friends who don't have a lot of social media community and stuff, but they're really good writers and they would love to publish a book. So what I tell people is, unless you have, like my publisher who published my books, her cutoff was like around 1 million in social media followership to get a good contract. But if you don't have that, I would say the best thing to do is self-publish. The current books that I'm pitching are to a tier 1 publishing house, and which is really scary and overwhelming, but also really exciting. But I actually had to have 3 endorsements from people who also have my size social media following or larger. Isn't that crazy? So it didn't just, not only do I have to have that following, but I have to have 3 handwritten endorsements from 3 people who have the same following or bigger, and not in my field. So you have to, it's pretty crazy. So anyway, I'll keep you posted, but I think Llewellyn is tier 2 or tier 3, but it's a fantastic publishing house for metaphysical books. My publisher of my first books was tier 3. So not the best, you know what I mean? But I had a great experience. I really liked it. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy thing. I don't want to go with Hay House, so I'm not pitching my books to Hay House. We don't need to talk all about my books tonight, but you asked about publishing and how to do that. I would go self-publish. And then what I would do is make sure your book really takes off, and then go to a publisher and say, I self-published this book. Look how well it did. Now I would like to write a book for you, and you'll probably have a really good chance of getting in. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people go with Hay House. Energy Muse went with Hay House. They had a great experience with Hay House, by the way. So that's not a bad place to go. I'm not going to write much more after this. And my dream was to be with a tier 1 publisher. So what my agent said is, if these are your last 3 books, let's bring them to where you really want them to be. So that's what we're doing. And thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. All right, chords. Referring to last night's class, do we have chords with our animal companions? I think so. I think we do. I mean, I don't know about you. The animals that I've been really close to in my life, and there's about a dozen, most of them have passed away. And Smudge is the only living animal that I've had in my life who's still alive and who I have that close of a connection with, where I feel it's like it's my child. And I still see Bella all the time, like my dog who passed away 5 years ago. I see her in my peripheral vision all the time. Dave does too. She's always around. I think we have chords to animal companions. I think we have chords to friends. I think we have chords to places. I think you can have a chord to a house, for example. I think you can have a chord to a place where you worked. I think you can have a chord to institutions of higher learning, or to a museum. Or, one time I walked into a museum, I think it was the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and my whole body was shaking, and I realized I think I had a chord to one of the items that was on display. I swear, I'm like, that's my headdress. And I was like literally shaking when I saw it. And I didn't even know what was going to be in the museum. It wasn't like I had read up online before and, looked at what displays they were going to have. Nothing like that. And I was 20, God, when I went to London, I was 24, 25. And I'll never forget just being like this and then seeing the thing and going, oh my God, like that. So I think you can chord to places too, and to animals for sure. Some of it sounds crazy maybe if you're not an animal person, but my relationships with animals are like, and I love so deeply that you always think about they don't live that long. But, that love also changes your life a little bit. Oh my God, Joanne, I'm so excited to see your cards. She said she sent me oracle cards, channeled messages from cats. Seriously, I'm so excited for that. I'll use them in our live readings. I really will. I'm really excited to see your cards. And that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? If you wanted to publish a book, you should probably start by writing an oracle deck. And again, if that's really successful, you could always take that to a publisher and go, like to Hay House, and go, check out my oracle cards, or whatever. And you never know. Could really take off for you. I love it. Let's see. I'm trying to get to as many of your questions as I can. Is this interesting to you? Are you enjoying this? I know we're a little all over the place with questions, but it's kind of fun. Yeah, it's nice to know that a lot of you feel connected to your animals too. Let's see, who needs the smoke meme? And what's your name on Facebook? Thank you, Carla, for doing that, by the way. Millie said she can give advice on self-publishing. Thank you for that, Millie. That's huge. Because self-publishing is a whole complex world too, and I don't have any experience in it. You're probably going to get 100 PMs now, Millie, but I think that's really kind of you to offer, and maybe you can consult, or something to people if they want, more in-depth help and support. Cecilia says, energetically drained and blocked from so much giving and not receiving. What would you recommend I do? I'm in turtle mode. Body pain went up a lot. Yeah, I've really been thinking about this, and I'm glad that you're mentioning it, but you have to know this isn't just you. I'm hearing this from so many people right now, Cecilia, and when you're on Facebook, sometimes it becomes its own reality, and you think, because everybody on Facebook seems like they're doing pretty okay. But then, when you look under the hood, or people tend to be pretty honest with me, it's they're having a hard time. This is not an easy time to be human and to be doing this human thing. So what I would say is, this is a time for energetic self-care. And what does that mean? Make sure you're taking your salt baths. I'd love to see you working with some magnesium. I would love to see you get some good Dead Sea salt. You can get it on Amazon. Get proper Dead Sea, though. It should look like gray mush, kind of. So what you should do is a cup of, a mix of Epsom and Dead Sea salt, which is going to get a lot of magnesium into your muscles. Run that water as hot as you're comfortable. I have MS, so I can't do super, super hot water because it irritates my system, but as hot as you can take it. And I always say not Japanese spa hot. I was engaged to a Japanese man before I met Dave, and my would have been mother-in-law would run me a bath, and the water was like scalding, and she was like, "That's a Japanese spa bath." So not Japanese spa hot. And then I want you to put birch oil in there. Get some birch essential oil. There are other pain relieving oils too that are really good. doTERRA has one called, we have a pain relief blend. doTERRA has one too that people really like called Blue something, I think. I don't know if I'd put that in your bath. In your bath, I would do some eucalyptus would be helpful too, and put a bloodstone. If you have Natrolite, put some Natrolite or bloodstone in your bath water. And soak. Try to soak for 20 to 30 minutes, sincerely, and do this every night. It may sound kind of weird, Cecilia, and at first I didn't believe how much it can do for pain relief, but I'm telling you, and get that water up over your shoulders, like really submerge yourself. The birch oil is really important. It's very good for pain, and it's very good for muscle softening and relaxing. So if your body pain is really an issue, that's what I would do, that's non-medical. And then energetically, what you want to do, we talked about the bubbling yesterday, right? Like putting yourself in a nice white bubble of protected light. Calling your energy in is so important at the end of the day, from all the places it's gone and everybody you've shared it with, calling all of that energy back into you, so that you have a deeper reservoir to draw from. Taking a little bit of a break from social media, which I know sounds crazy because we're all in there all the time. I'm there. I try to take weekends off, but it's not easy, and I still pick up my phone without even thinking about it. You know what I mean? So, but sometimes just 24 hours off of that, because Facebook is a big blinking energetic cord. You realize that, right? Facebook's got us all hook, line, and sinker. Because it's almost like when you're not on it, you can feel like the loss of the cord, and it's like you almost like intuitively want to get back into it. So it's kind of nice to give yourself a day off from that too. What I'm getting intuitively for you too is massage, and maybe somebody who can do Reiki on you while they're massaging you. So a conscious body worker would be really helpful for you. I don't know if you have somebody close by, or if I'm not doing massage right now because of the pandemic. It's just too risky for my family. But if you're not in a high risk group like me and Zoe, maybe you can have somebody come and mask up and do some body work on you. Would be helpful for you too. And thank you for sharing your experience, because a lot of us are feeling like this. I just love you so much, and I wish I could wave a wand and help you move the energy. But the other thing I'll tell you too, for all of you, is start opening that central channel, right? We talk about this a lot, but there are quite a few crystals that open the root chakra and the crown chakra, which by definition sort of opens the rest of the sushumna, or that central channel, to allow energy to move more quickly, so you don't feel so stuck. So you want to work with like a hematoid quartz. Tibetan quartz is another one that does that. Lepidocrocite quartz will do that. Those are pretty much the best when it comes to the dual chakra crystals. Hi, Christiana. She says, I've heard great things about your physical wellness classes. Do they address the extra weight as associated with the chakras as you did last night? Yes, they do. They really do. And I will tell you something. Weight loss, in my experience, is almost entirely energetic. I do not come from a line of people with high metabolisms at all. And when my vibration is high and I can maintain it, I don't have to watch what I eat. When I am depressed and discouraged and afraid, I put on weight around the middle, my cortisol levels rise, and it's like I could look at a donut and gain a pound. So because I've learned all of this, and I've learned how the body works, which is really on the basis of pH, right? You have to neutralize and alkalize your system and raise and maintain your vibration. When you fall in love, you lose weight. Why? Because you're like, I got candle wax in my hand, but you know what I mean? Because you're like, I don't need food, I just need love. And then, then you get into a pandemic and you're like, well, shit sticks, everybody. What happened to that vibe? It's a shit stick. Yeah. Interesting, right? What are good tools to use for manifesting from Jimmy? It's a great question. So I will say this. Manifesting is entirely energetic too. Are there tools you can use to enhance the energy? Yes. But you do not, and it's ironic for me to say it as somebody who sells magical things, right? I could fill a room for you with every abundance, prosperity, manifestation, candle, perfume, stone, whatever. And if you weren't in alignment, nothing would happen, right? And you know this, but it's kind of good for me to say it, right? It's true, Tanya. So what I will say is the energetics of manifestation, the number one reason people don't manifest. And have you noticed most people don't manifest? I'm just saying. It's kind of my job to notice these things, you know what I mean? So I'm always just kind of aware. Deep blue is the pain relieving oil from doTERRA. I've heard great things about it, so that's why I share it. Birch tar, though, is the business. So most people don't manifest because they know how to raise a vibration, but they don't know how to maintain it. They really don't. And so the number one thing I will tell you, because I'm pretty good at manifesting, I'm very careful what I think about, what I pay attention to, and what I focus on, and what I say I want, because it tends to show up. I'm pretty good at it. But the reason I'm good at it is, and I'm not even saying this is a great thing, I have a lot of faith. When I put my head and heart towards something, I never look back. And I tell this story all the time, right? That everybody thought Sage Goddess was like, what's that? And because there were no crystal shops back then, and there were no full moon rituals online then. Not really, it seemed like the weirdest, dumbest thing ever to most people in my life. Even to Dave. Dave was like, you're going to do what? What? You're a professor, But I was like, no, I'm doing this. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome. It's already awesome. And literally, I had to just tell everybody, stick it, can it. You can have your feelings, but don't share them with me, kind of thing, right? I just wasn't hearing it. So when I decide I want something, I really go whole hog toward it, and I don't let anybody discourage me. If I fail, I fail, but I don't want to fail because I didn't believe. And I don't want to fail because I listened to Joe Bob, who, didn't believe in me, right? So I think that's the most important thing to remember with manifestation. Now, are there attraction tools? Yes, there are. We talk about these all the time. Yellow apatite and arvedzenite are really important for manifestation. They're attraction stones. Magnetite, lodestone, really good. Also magnesite, which is a different mineral. Beeswax absolute, very powerful for attraction. Labdanum, ancient times, going back to Persia, was thought of as an attraction oil. Physical attraction, but also energetic attraction. So those are some tools you can incorporate. I'll tell you something. I feel like the Synergy 12 creates a really powerful little vortex of energy for manifestation. I also believe that you have to set your intentions at the new moon. You have to. Everything I've ever done, the house I live in, the Sage Goddess, getting a PhD, having my kids, everything, new moon. My PhD was a new moon intention. My kids were new moon intentions. This house was a new moon intention. It's really true. The building where Sage Goddess moved this year was a new moon intention. Set it and forget it, right? You set your intention and you leave it to the universe how it's going to manifest that for you. I hope that was helpful. There are a lot of Joe Bobs in the world. Listen, everybody's got an opinion. I won't say the saying because it's crude, but you know what I mean. Everybody's got an opinion. They're entitled to them. I just know that people are often, you know, when they're critical of what you're doing, it's often either their own insecurity or jealousy or fear for you or their own issues that they're projecting onto you. I just find that I don't talk about what I'm manifesting a lot kind of till it happens. Yeah. Can one subconsciously narrow or expand a chord? I think so. I think we probably do it all the time. Emalea, it's a great question. I think we do it all the time, don't you? Like when you're around somebody and the energy doesn't feel good, don't you kind of find yourself like kind of subconsciously contracting that connection? Or when you're with somebody and you're like, the energy is just so good, you find yourself kind of like, yeah. And you know what I mean? Like I think they kind of expand and contract all the time. And I think we definitely have a little bit of a subconscious, process there too. Can you give tips to switch manifesting to different categories? When I'm in danger, I get warnings that undesirable, whatever, but I have trouble coping with how these signs are sent. Interesting. Let's see. I want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly, Cynthia, because I may come at it the wrong way. Because you're talking about something slightly different, which I think is more around your intuition, you know, like how do you know if you're in danger? Or unless you're talking about, are you able to manifest danger? So I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. Chanel said, yes, Athena, I know, I say the same thing. Oh, you can't. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about though. I can't say it live because I don't want to, it's crude. Jamie said, I'm having a hard time fully letting go when we journey or meditate on my own. What can I do to have this experience? I feel like I have no real contact with my guides or higher self. There are some oils and incense blends and stones that help to open you. You know, I really do believe in Moldavite and in all the tektites and the meteorite, like we have now, the Campo del Cielo. Those are very buzzy. And when you work with those and you burn a little bit of your incense, you know, and we were talking earlier about Boom Shiva, right, which has buchu, but you can make your own. You can get buchu and some other ingredients and make your own. I think it's good to work with some tools that are kind of soften you up a little bit. Sometimes what I've noticed is people go into meditation and they're so focused on, am I going to see something? Am I going to hear something? They're like waiting for their epiphany, and it doesn't allow them to relax. Rather than just meeting the journey or the meditation on its own terms. Not every journey or meditation, not even every ayahuasca journey or meditation is super powerful. Some of them are very mild, and then some of them are like shattering, right? I like barite as a tool for meditation. I find it really helps me. So if you want to know like my personal favorite, if I'm feeling blocked, man, if barite can't push past it, there's probably a bigger issue. So you might try working with some different crystals, and especially some of the more extraterrestrial materials, the Libyan gold tektite, the Agni-Mani tektite, the Moldavites, the meteorites. It would be interesting for me to know whether those could be good allies for you in your practice. Tina says, do the cords disappear when the soul contract breaks, or since most people in your life come back to Earth as well, does that cord automatically attach again, or is it a new cord? It's a great question. I mean, honestly, I don't know 100%. but my best guess in theory, I think the cords remain. I don't think it's like we leave this life and just everything gets cut and it's all over. Most of the people in your life are in your web, and you've met them before and you'll probably meet them again. And that can either be terrifying or really reassuring. And sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't. Like with my daughter, I have known forever that I've known her before. You know, like I say, I know she was my mom in a past life, and even she and I have talked about it, and she's pretty clear about it too. But with other people, it's not always as clear. You know I knew Dave before. In what capacity? It's a little less clear. I have theories. Is it normal to feel a little drained the day after cord narrowing? Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when you narrow those cords, the universe enjoys balance, right? It's one of the Hermetic principles, is this idea of balance in the universe. The universe is always looking to strike a balance. That's why we have things like set points, right? So, and that's the goal of healing, is to get to alignment. You don't want to be all up and all down or one or the other. You want to be right in the middle. And so what you might want to consider doing if you're new to cord narrowing and you felt a little tired the day after, for every cord that you narrow, you might choose another cord and breathe some additional energy into it. Like with one of your children or with your cat or with your partner or with, your best friend or whatever. Choose one of those cords and expand into it so that as one gets narrow, the other gets broader. That way you don't feel like there's less energy coming to you. But I will tell you, as you narrow cords with people and places and things that drain you energetically, you're actually going to feel better. It's amazing how much energy gets drained and leaked, right? And that's what I'm telling you. Every time you open Facebook, it's like big neon cords. It's like sometimes it's nice just to step away for a minute. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. Thank you for that feedback, Jimmy, too. Lauren says, I've learned from you not to tell others about what I'm manifesting. They don't need to know everything. I think that's been the medicine of my 40s. Not everybody needs to know everything all the time. I think that's one of the gifts of age. And I just find that, and then if I do kind of let a cat out of a bag and somebody's not, somebody kind of tears it down or makes fun of it or whatever, then afterward I'm like, why did I even say that? I've just had that experience, so it's like, it's best just not to say anything, right? Let's see. I'm going back up a little bit. Let me go back down. Last month you talked about quantum physics and the Akash. How does astral travel and dreaming relate to this? This is from Heidi Kelly. I'm a huge dreamer, astral traveler, where our dreams continue to the next night. I've had that experience too. It's pretty awesome. Again, here's my theory, and a lot of people have different views on this. I know I always say that, but I always worry that it's going to be like, well, Athena said. These are big mysteries of the universe, right? I really used to think about astral travel and Akashic energy and the records and everything in a different way than I do now. A lot of that was shaped by medicine journeys that I've done, with mushrooms and ayahuasca and very visual journeys where the veil's been pulled back and I've actually been able to kind of see how this stuff works, this big universe that we're in. And so, and the big lesson of all of that was there aren't physical other dimensions, at least as far as I can tell. We live in a holographic universe. Do you know what I mean? This third dimension is physical, but the rest of them are not. And so as you move out of 3D, you lose space and you lose time. And then once you're out of the time-space continuum, you're out of the time-space continuum. Past the fifth dimension of reality, there's no time and there's no space. So it's not like the Akashic records, you're here and they're up here and you just have to walk up here or somehow take an elevator or astrally project using the right crystal or something. It's really about removing some of the dimensional barriers which we do through crystals, which we do through oils, which we do through meditation, which we do through plant ceremony, which we do through all these different things. Some of them are more effective than others. But once you get past that, then you have access to all of this. I could access the Akashic records sitting right here if I could have techniques to move myself out of 3D. I have accessed them right here. Done ayahuasca right there, like a bunch of times, right? So I've been in this room and accessed the Akashic records. But the difference is I was in a state where I had moved beyond the time-space continuum. Now, when it comes to astral travel, I think that is the best, easiest, fastest way to get into the other dimensions, except you're asleep. Because the reality is, at least from my perspective and based on my experience, it is really hard to know what this is and keep doing it. Like, to know that this human experience is real but not real. You know what I mean? Like, this is a weird thing that we're doing here on this planet. And the more you know how weird it is, it makes it hard to keep doing it. It's like, wait, this is pointless. Except it's not, right? Your soul is learning and growing and evolving. But once you realized how kind of contrived it all is, then it raises other questions, right? That's why some people don't even like to work with plant medicine, because they're like, I don't know if I can keep doing this in the same way that I've been doing it for so long once I know, like how vast this universe is, and that the most constrained we'll ever be as a soul is right here, right now on this planet with each other. So the spirit guides allow us to astrally travel during dream time because we're not fully aware. We think we're aware. And lucid dreaming is being pretty aware. But there still is a barrier there. You're still in a slightly different state of conscious awareness, right? So it's safe for the psyche. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but this is what I have experienced. Yeah. Let me see. So how do I know I'm astral traveling in dreams? Are all dreams astral travel? Most people would say not all dreams are astral travel. I believe most are. I do. Barbara's got a bad storm and has to go. Well, we're almost at our time, too. I'm going to try to answer just a couple more questions, and I'm going to let you guys go for your evening. Yeah. Is it the direction we're facing individually or the actual direction that's important when blowing out your candle? I always do the actual directions, Rena. It's a great question, but that's how I do it. Phoenix Rising, Athena, assuming the cords are attached to our energetic field and originates mostly at the solar plexus, does that mean it's all bundled up and originates at the root of our solar plexus, crowded? Can be, and some people cord at other places. The reason that you have an umbilical cord at your belly button is that is the primal cord, right? It's actually a physical manifestation of what happens to you energetically. I was obsessed with seeing my cords after my kids were born because I just thought it was the coolest thing. I don't know if you've ever seen an umbilical cord, but it's magnificent. I didn't get to play with it very long because I banked especially with Zoe, I had a C-section and I banked her blood. So they whisk your cord right away because they've got to get all of that blood out of there and get it stored quickly. So I didn't get to, with my son, I didn't bank his blood. So I got to kind of touch it and hold it and look at it and be in awe of it. But that's kind of a physical manifestation of energetically what happens with everybody, right? It just allows you to see it in a really physical way. And you've had an umbilical cord, all of you had to get here. So it can feel kind of bunched, and it can, I do believe that the cords don't necessarily come directly into your body. I think they come into your energy field, and your energy field is about a foot around you. Your auric field, or the etheric field as we call it. So I believe that there are cords into your field. They don't all necessarily have to be physical cords that are connected to you. Yeah. Banking blood is, at the time it was a really hard decision because it's very expensive and we didn't have the money to do it. But Zoe and I both have autoimmune diseases, and I decided before she was born that I wanted to have some cord blood banked in case they did any stem cell research that could help her or me as we got older. And now I'm really glad I did it because I have enough of her cord blood, and it would work well for Nick because he's her brother biologically, and it'll work well for Dave too. So we have enough stem cells to do at least some work for one of us if we really needed it down the road. Yeah. It is very expensive. And then there's a storage fee. You have to pay a fee every year to have it stored. But one day it could save our lives. It could save my mobility. You know what I mean? It's tough because when you have an illness, sometimes you have to do things that, you know, are scary or expensive or whatever, thinking that down the road it could be something that's really useful for you. So yeah, so we every year on her birthday, our credit card gets charged for her storage fee of her cord blood. But who knows? It could be her grandchildren who end up using it. You know, it's the coolest thing to know it's there. Yeah, that umbilical cord, you guys, it's interesting. After class last night, I was actually laying in bed last night, and I was thinking about the umbilical cord, and I was thinking, why didn't we talk about this tonight? Like, it's the ultimate cord, and you all have one. Kind of gives you a visual, doesn't it? And I was actually thinking as a teacher, like, wow, I should have used that as an example in case people are visual, and kind of helps you visualize. So thank you for leading us back to that tonight, because it ended up being the right metaphor and a great way for us to conclude our time together too. Yeah, I know. Every year it's funny because it's expensive, and every year I kind of want to tell her that it's one of her gifts. I know that's kind of shitty, but every year I'm like, ugh. But I know we're doing it for the right reasons. Yeah, we should have talked about it last night, but it's okay. It's great. Talked about it today, and the timing was probably just right. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's fabulous. And I love all the different places that we go in our conversations too. Let's see. I see Cynthia Coutre, and she said that she responded to me, but the feed sometimes, Cynthia, is just hard for me. I wish you could see it from my perspective. It's a little overwhelming. So I do try to get back to everything. But Cynthia, if you want to just make sure Alexis saw it, and then I can always, if you want to post in the Facebook group too and tag me, then I can come and respond there too. I would love to. I want to make sure I answer your questions. Let's see. Casey said, after my last LSD journey almost 3 years ago, this human 3D thing became extremely overwhelming and existential for many months until we started diving deep in 2019. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly kind of what I was talking about. It's a blessing and a challenge. A lot of people think it makes being human easier, but it actually, it's like, it just complicates, kind of everything. So I'll take one more question really quick, and then I'll send you on your way. Tomorrow we have a full moon, don't forget. I hope you're excited. It's a Virgo full moon. It's not my favorite full moon. I do have worksheets for you, by the way, at sagegoddess.com. Not that you don't already have enough worksheets in your life. I mean, this whole class is worksheets, right? But if you want to do this, it's kind of nice. This is free. You can go and download it at sagegoddess.com. We leave it up for 24, 48 hours. And it kind of tells you everything you need for the full moon. And then it gives you journaling questions. So you can, some people are printing these out and adding them to their alchemy notebook, so that at the end of the year, they can kind of track what they were thinking at the new moon and the full moon. So if you want to do that, that's something for you too. Aaron Wentworth asked, mentioned zipping up your chakras last night in relation to protection techniques. I'd love to know more. So the main thing is that you want to, when you're working with energy, right? Your chakras are really the center of the entire energetic system in the body. They're the main, what we call nadis, right? N-A-D-I, or chakras. Nadis is the word that comes out of the Vedas, from the original source, right, of all information on the chakras. You have more than 7. You have 108 chakras in your body, but those main 7 are really where energy sits, coagulates, gets transmuted, all of that. So they're what you have to protect the most. And I like to unzip my chakras sometimes to go in and to assess them. Sometimes I like to unzip my chakras before I run my pendulum over them to see if they're balanced and aligned. But you always want to make sure that they are zipped up, though, before you kind of go out into the world, because I believe they sit in that central channel, the sushumna, and that sushumna is vulnerable. And some people do a lot of energy work and they never think about, are the energy centers sealed? Are they closed? Are they open? And so it's just it's one more little visualization technique that you can do. When you create that white bubble of light and you step inside and you look up and down and all around to make sure you're sealed. And then if you want, you can put mirrors around it to send people's energy back to them. It's a nice thing to do at night so that you can rest. And then it's also nice just to visualize a zipper that might run from your perineum all the way up over the front of you and seal up at the top of your head, from soft spot to soft spot, right? And just to visualize kind of pulling up that zipper at night and closing off the central channel too. These are all just quick things you can do. And even if you're like talking to somebody somewhere and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good, like bubble up, zip up, close down, And what's funny is when you do things like that, sometimes the conversation ends real quick. People know. Sensitive people know. It's really, really true. Yeah. It's like having your fly open. That's very true. Yeah, it's like a sleeping bag. Zip it up at night. Make sure it's zipped. It probably is, but it's good to double check. This is your little energetic inventory of doing the things. The zipper thing gives you claustrophobia. I have claustrophobia, so I get it. A lot of us who were buried alive have claustrophobia. Get me out, right? Yeah, it is. There's a lot of Virgo energy in my house. Nick is Virgo moon, and Dave is Virgo sun and Virgo rising. So when it's a Virgo full moon, they tend to get into it. Like little. Dave and Nick get along famously. They're so alike, but sometimes they're so alike that they, like butt heads, and I'm just not down with that. And neither is Zoe. I mean, she's my little water. I'm all her fire. We just kind of go away. I'm just like, you guys can have your little thing over there. Virgo, 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 Virgo. Well, you didn't do that well enough. Well, I saw what you did and you left a mess. Well, I'd clean it up if you cleaned up your mess. Like, I can't do that stuff, Well, thank you for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to gently ring my bell one more time. So again, Melissa doesn't... That was a little louder than I wanted it to be. So this concludes Soul Shift for February. Can you believe 4 weeks from tonight, we will be a quarter of the way through this year together. And we'll be through calcination. And so then the next phases of alchemy begin. And it's less of this burning through, burning away, burning down, burning out energy, and more than about, once you've calcified everything, calcinated everything, then the next process is going through sifting and sorting and deciding what you want to keep. It's kind of like cleaning your house, and what you've been doing for the last 2 months is putting things in piles. Right? So I got a pile of trauma over here. I've got a pile of shitty experience with my mom when I was 6. I have a pile over here of all the issues with my partner. I've got, you've been making piles. After this, we're going to start going through the piles. What do you want to keep? What's going to make it, through to ultimately become reintegrated back into you? So good stuff is ahead. I hope you're excited. Thank you, Alexis, as always. Much appreciated. Your code is candle20 at Sage Goddess for 20% off candles if there's anything you've been looking for. And that's everything I've got for you until tomorrow. And your full moon worksheet is there too on the website if you'd like to have that. I got piles. This is not a pile competition. My piles are probably bigger than your piles. But I might be older than you or more dysfunctional than you. Who knows? It's not a competition. You bet, you guys. It was great to be with you tonight. I will see you tomorrow.